Oops. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Senator Katie Frey-Heston, and we are having a work session on Howard County Bill 1523 related to deer management. The purpose of today's work session is to answer questions that have been submitted. And so we have a number of, my phone's ringing. We have a number of people joining us for the county, and maybe we could just have the county representatives introduce themselves. And then my proposal for the agenda today was to start with addressing the safety concerns and run through the DNR data that we have on hunting accidents, and then go through the questions that have been submitted in the order they were submitted. Sound good? Okay, I'll turn it over to somebody on the county to introduce your team. So Dan, I think if you're nodding, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. We'll go through all of us here. Mute yourself. I'm Dan McNamara. Just make sure everybody's muted here. Are you getting that feedback?
You are.
How about now?
It's better.
Okay. So I'm Dan McNamara, the Superintendent of Natural and Historic Resources. So deer management falls under this division. We also have Tim Maynard, who is our wildlife manager for Howard County. We have Kevin Vest, who is our park ranger manager for Howard County. He oversees all the sharpshooters in that other program. I see Brian Moody's here. Brian Moody's our chief of parks within Howard County. And then we have Brenda Belinsky, who is our conservation manager. That section, what falls under me, Tim Maynard would work for her directly. I think that's all we have here today.
Thank you very much, Dan. And it looks like we have from the delegation for the work session, we've got Delegate Jessica Feldmark, we have Delegate Natalie Ziegler, Delegate Jen Terraza, Delegate Pam Gazzoni, and Delegate Terry Hill. So thank you all for making time to get these questions answered. Really appreciate it. Okay, Dan, I'll turn it over to you. Why don't you just start with a quick run through on the safety data?
Can I jump in with a quick question? I'm sorry, Madam Chair for this meeting. You're on mute, but the data you're about to run through, do we have a copy of that? Or if not, can it be emailed to us?
Yes.
I don't have it in front of me. I'm not sure if I missed something, so. But.
We could also pull it up on the screen. I don't know if it was sent to you or not. I assumed it was because I had a copy of it. Abby, can you confirm?
I'm not certain if they'll be able to share their screen. I can email it out if someone can email it to me.
Okay. Stan, well, why don't we
share my
wait,
screen as well?
Why don't we just wait 10 minutes and jump into the other questions, and then we'll come back in like 10 minutes once we've got all the data in front of us. Is that good? Okay, so then Dan, what if you started with question 1? Does everybody have the questions and the answers that were emailed back to you guys? Delegate Feldmark, you're on mute.
I'm looking.
I got answers to the questions that I submitted by email later, but I don't believe I've seen answers to the questions I asked in the delegation meeting or anyone else.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought everybody had emailed all of this out. It might be, Abby, if somebody could share their screen, that might be helpful.
Do you see the green option at the bottom, the share screen?
Yeah.
Does anyone from do any of our guests from the county see that? It should
I
be at
do
the bottom
see it.
panel.
Yes, we have.
Then you should be able to share your screen.
We can have Tim Maynard share these documents. He has them, I believe, right, Tim?
Also, Madam Chair, I have two sets of questions that we received by requesting from your office this morning.
All right, you have what?
We requested them from your office this morning and they were nice and provided them. Or maybe it was last night, but either way,
Have the questions.
I have two sets of questions.
Yes, so the first set was the compilation that we received from everybody. The second was the subset from Delegate Feldmark. Give me 2 seconds, I'll try to, Tim, do you have these electronically that you could share?
Tim's working on that right now to get them shared.
Senator Hester, can I just ask, from whom would these questions and answers have come from? Would it have come from the delegation staff or from your office or somebody in your office? I'm trying to search for it.
I'm just going to take a guess here. I think maybe what happened is they were sent to the county from Senator Hester's office and maybe returned to her. And the same for the ones that Delegate Feldmark did and returned to her, but I don't know if they got to the delegation office.
I have the documents, but it's not letting me share screen them.
Try sharing now. I think it should work.
So it looks like when Dara emailed the data to me, he only emailed it to me. We assumed it had gone to everybody. So Brandon is forwarding the email from our committee council to all of you right now. I believe he's using your the Senate or the, you know, your whatever email it usually goes to for delegation stuff.
Senator Hester, oh, there we go. Never mind.
The fitting screensaver. Tim, you're on mute.
Can everyone see that?
I can see it.
I can see it.
So these, I believe, were the questions submitted by Delegate Feldmark.
Mute Tim. Would you like us to read the question and then go through the answers at this time?
Oh, yes, please. I mean, just you can paraphrase and we can all read at the same time, but these are also being emailed to you all.
Okay, so the first question that was submitted was a question specifically about the county's managed hunt program and what the selection screening criteria is for our hunters. And as you can see, I provided a list of everything that our bow hunters have to go through to be a member of our program, including submitting to a background check, submitting documents every year, including their hunter safety card, bow education cards, their Maryland State hunting license. Hunters inside of our program have to go through a shooter qualification program. So we actually take them out in the field and test their skills and make sure that they are accurate with the equipment that they're using. Participants also have to pay a $65 fee to be a member of our program. That money goes right back into our program. So there is an extensive process to be a member of this program to help us manage the population on county parklands. Does anybody have any questions about in the regards to the screening criteria for participants in our county hunt program?
Can I just ask you to highlight which of these are sort of above and beyond what's required of someone hunting outside your program?
Absolutely. So outside of our program, for a person to legally bow hunt in the state of Maryland, they have to first go through a hunter safety course. So once they pass their hunter safety course, which includes a field day workshop and several hours of coursework, they can then apply for a state of Maryland hunting license once they receive their hunter safety card. Once they receive a standard state of Maryland hunting license, they then would have to get a bow stamp as well to be able to bow hunt. And then, after that, it's up to the individual hunter to determine whether or not where they want to hunt, whether that be public or private land. And then it's up to them to follow the state of Maryland, rules and regulations as they pertain to the hunting activity that they're participating in. Our program goes above and beyond in that, we screen our participants. They all get background checks. They go through this shooter qualification program or process that, ensures that they are safe and qualified bow hunters, because, we want to be obviously safe and we want to be efficient in our program. Every year we require that they submit documents to us showing that they still have a hunter safety card, they still have a hunting license, and we even go above and beyond and require a bow safety course, which is not required for just a general bow hunter in Maryland.
I see that Delegate Hill has her hand up, followed by Delegate Terraza.
Okay, thank you. So if we did the bill as introduced, I know we're looking at as introduced versus explaining the managed hunt issue. Do you have any idea how many bow hunters would be in your program or how many kills they would take as opposed to people who are participating in the non-managed hunts just during bow season, who aren't in your program?
So I can quote figures from this past year as far as my program goes. So traditionally, bow hunting in itself is not overly as efficient as regular firearms hunting. In my program last year, bow hunters participating in my program as just bow hunters harvested 20 deer inside of my program. Inside the county, that number was far greater from individual hunters. I'm getting some figures right now for what the number of harvests were based on just individual hunters on private property. So the figures, I have is that 35% of the deer harvested in Maryland were taken by archery hunters last year. In Howard County, I believe that figure is somewhere around, I can get the exact number, but that figure is somewhere in the hundreds. It's actually 422 were harvested in FY21 or 21 through 22. So the number of harvests are considerably more on private land than they are inside of our program. But you also have to remember that our program is just on county park lands. We only have a limited amount of time to conduct that program. And archery hunting is, it's a long drawn out process for the most part. We do harvest considerably more deer through firearms hunting, but the archery hunting is still very important because it allows us to get into some of these parks that we can't do firearms hunting in.
So that's helpful, but I'm still a little confused. I'm trying to get a sense. I mean, you're talking about your program and how well-trained folks are in your program, but I don't know if the folks in your program constitute 65% of the people who would be affected by this change in law, or 25%, or 2%. Your program sounds great, but I have no idea if a lot of people participated or not.
I'll jump in here if I could. The issue when most harvesting that takes place by bow is on private property, not on lands that are owned by the government. So in the eastern part of the county, most lands are not huntable by the public. The only public hunting that would take place is if they join our program. And that's the issue of why the population is so high in the eastern part of the county, is because there's really no management but us taking place. there's a small part, there's a larger parcel here and there where you might have some hunting. So the goal of this is to increase that area by 2/3 if we reduce that setback to 50 feet. So that's why you're seeing not the harvest numbers you would compared to the prior.
And pause for 1 minute, please. Tim, can you mute yourself? We're getting the feedback again.
I'm trying.
Okay, we just got to a point where we couldn't hear Dan. There, it's good. Okay, Dan, please continue.
Okay, so that's the main reason. If everybody heard it in a nutshell, I'll just repeat real quickly. So in the east, there's no hunting pressure at all, basically. It's just our program that's controlling the deer. There's an exception here and there. So the restrictions that we're finding is that going by state law of the 150 feet, we're not able to manage the amount of land that we need to reduce that population. I mean, 150 yards, sorry. Does that help?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on, what does hunting pressure mean?
Good question. So meaning that no one else hunts in the eastern part of the county. So there's no pressure on the wildlife from hunters. The only way that they get managed is through our program for the most part. So when I say hunting pressure, I'm just talking about people that actively hunt to manage the population, whether they're doing it for population control, crop damage, or sustaining their families.
Okay, Delegate Hurwood, you're all set. Can you put your hand down and move on? This is a process check. It's 10:20, and we have over 10 questions to go through. So. Can you guys hear me?
You were all correctly before, but I don't know if it's my computer.
I was telling you before.
It's still happening.
You guys can't hear me.
It's very staticky and garbled.
Angels are flying over. Go on to number 2.
So question 2, what are the safety requirements and procedures for the county's managed hunt that exceed or differ from what is required by hunters by state law? So some of the major differences that I kind of already touched on, but I'll go into some more detail. Our county-led managed hunts are like a program that these screened hunters can participate in. They show up and our staff is on site for these managed hunts. These hunts are specially authorized by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, which means we have to submit for a permit to do them and get special approval from MDDNR. So all of our hunters go through, we check their safety gear and everything like that before they head out to their tree stands. They're required in our program to hunt from a tree stand. Most of them hunt from portable tree stands, climber stands, if you're familiar with those, we do offer some ladder stands for people who are disabled or elderly and so would like to be a part of our program. All of our sites are predetermined and marked in the mindset of safety and also the most potential for where they could harvest an animal. So we also take extra measures to notify the public that we're doing these managed hunts through the form of mailers to people that surround the parks. And we also provide signage on our parks to notify the public that they are happening. Again, we also restrict the number or the distance that hunters can harvest their deer with, especially with bow. So we don't allow hunters to shoot over 25 yards inside of our program. And we do test that, like I said, through our bow qualification program as well. State law, as far as if you want to hunt on just private land or public land, most of the time it's up to the individual hunter to make that determination as to whether or not they're being safe or whether or not they are following the safety zone laws, depending on the area that they are hunting. So that's where it differs from our program to the, just the general hunter that's hunting under a hunting license on private or public property.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Okay, so two things. Does this bill require hunting from a tree stand? And is this program restricted by the 150 yards to begin with that's in the law? Are you guys exempt from that?
Yes, so we are required to follow all the applicable state laws. So yes, we are confined by the 150-yard rule. So when we set up a managed hunt at one of our parks, we have established safety zones that are 150 yards from any of the occupied structures that surround our parklands. So yeah, we're restricted by that. And what was the second?
The other question was, does this bill require hunting from a tree stand?
So I believe, as I read the bill as it's set, it currently does not require you hunt from a tree stand. But I did go into that a little bit more in another question, in that most, I would probably say 99% of bow hunters hunt elevated from a tree stand. And that's just the most efficient way that bow hunters choose to hunt. I don't know any bow hunters that ground hunt. It's just inefficient based on how close you have to get to the animal, how deer smell hunters and those kind of things. I don't know any bow hunters that don't hunt from tree stands.
So it might make sense to put that in the bill and wouldn't restrain anybody who is doing good hunting practices?
It may. I do know that there is verbiage currently that Harford County has that specifically states it has to be a tree stand. But then you get into what is a tree stand? What's considered a tree stand? There's a lot of things that people consider are tree stands. So, but I believe most bow hunters are going to choose to hunt from tree stands to begin with. Who has another question? Okay, Ziegler.
So that's my only objection to this bill, is to try to tighten up the phrase elevated position. And I don't know exactly what the right thing to do would be. Ladder stands, which I'm not familiar with, but if that's necessary for disabled or elderly people, that seems reasonable. I just feel like elevated position doesn't cover it, even though most people get up in a tree stand. I still think that we want people to be shooting down, or I feel like the public would feel much better about this bill if it was clear that people were shooting down, not, across into their local nearby subdivision.
Can you all hear me at this point?
Yes.
So we had asked committee counsel to look into this question after the delegation hearing last week. Dara, were you able to investigate?
Yeah, so I spoke with somebody at DNR about because elevated position and tree stand, as far as I can see under statute, neither of these terms are kind of strictly defined. And so I'd asked DNR how they interpreted those positions, and they said that essentially a tree stand is a type of elevated position that incorporates a tree. So it could be they said a climbing stand, a ladder stand, a hang-on stand, as some examples. And then for an elevated position, they said that could be a tree stand. It could be some other platform or freestanding structure. And they had said that in the field, most DNR officers would consider, sorry, I'm just reading through my notes here. I'm not sure that they consider it like a ridge or a hilltop. I asked about an elevated position. I don't know how our guests from the county interpret that. I think the idea of an elevated position was that the hunter needs to be elevated off the ground. In my understanding, I don't know, Tim, if you have a different understanding or interpretation of those wording. I would add as well that they said there's no specifications on how high necessarily, in their view, the elevated position or tree stand needs to be. There's not like a Tim, you seem surprised by that.
I'm sorry, say again.
There's no specifications on how high an elevated position needs to be. There's not like a minimum height. Okay. Or for a tree stand.
Correct. So I spoke with Brian Eiler yesterday. He's the head of Wildlife Heritage Services. He oversees the deer program. He oversees, basically hunting in the state of Maryland. And I asked him this question about the elevated position and what Maryland DNR stance is as far as a definition. And they said they don't have a stance. They don't have a definition on what an elevated position is. That it could mean, many things. But I would also say that, and I know we're putting a lot of trust in what the industry standard is, that many hunters are going to be hunting, somewhere from 8 to 10, if not 20 feet up in the tree. And I don't know, like I said, in my many, many years, I don't know of any archery hunters that ground hunt or don't take shots going down into the ground. I believe that's why, there's several other counties here who just don't specify either elevated position or to hunt from a tree stand, because it's already an accepted industry standard that's just what we do.
So Tim, let me,
So
if I may.
In the interest of time, I was going to suggest that we try to get some of what Dara had gotten in writing, that maybe we actually look to other states and see if they have a good definition. But we've now covered 2 of over 8 questions. So just process check. I think we're really far down in the weeds.
And we may have to wait again next week, but let me ask this, if the gentleman can also speak to that. We keep talking about elevated and you say there's no definition, but apparently so number one, it seems to me that if we specify, as Delegate Ziegler suggests, a tree stand, ladder stand, or other kind of stand of at least 8 to whatever feet, that covers that. And the other option might be to talk about an angle, that we're not talking about a 60-degree angle from wherever you're shooting, but we're talking about, 45 or lower or 30 degrees lower. So for all of you hunters, does the angle, is that a more specific indication or metric of what we mean by shooting down than talking about the height above the ground?
I'm going to comment to that. I think that would be very difficult for the average hunter to be able to determine. I would suggest, and I've talked to the managers here, we're more comfortable with a standard 8 foot, at minimum of 8 foot or higher, that location. We'd be very happy with that. If that would be a happy medium. Don't know of any hunter that's hunting below 8 feet. I'd be very surprised, because you don't want your scent to affect that hunt. So if it was a minimum of 8 feet, I think that could solve all these problems. And it's a very easy number to measure for the average person.
Fabulous. We will take that recommendation on. I say we go on to the next question.
So we kind of just covered this clarification of an elevated position. Why not specify tree stands as Harford County does? So if everyone's comfortable, I think we covered that. The question 4 was a question in regards to, so the question reads, County Code regarding discharge of guns specifies that the section does not apply to the discharge of guns where necessary to protect life or property, including crops or livestock, or to kill any dangerous threatening animal. This provision is important for farmers. Is there a similar exception in state law? Does the same or similar exception apply to bow hunting? So this was an interesting question, and this was one of the ones I contacted Brian Eiler in MDDNR, And the answer to the question is, so there are exceptions, and the exceptions that we can think about is specifically crop damage permits, which are applied by farmers who have a nuisance deer problem, damage to their crops, and then they can prove that damage to Maryland Department of Natural Resources. They're then issued a crop damage permit with a number of tags that allows them to harvest deer outside of normal hunting season and normal bag limits to help mitigate or offset the damage to their crops. So that was really the only instance that we could see that there was a similar exception to some of the county code. A lot of hunters utilize crop damage permits, and again, they get it's a special permit from Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And most of the time, hunters, or farmers utilize hunters to help them fill these crop damage permits, and they can utilize anything that's legal in the state of Maryland to harvest deer. That includes firearm, bow, or anything like that.
Permit, does that farmer or family, are they the only ones who can hunt, or is it apply to land?
Okay, so that's a good question. So the farmer would get issued the crop damage permit. They then have the ability to have agents under that crop damage permit. Most of the time they have to list those agents. So if you own a farm and you have 10 friends who are avid hunters, they may authorize those people to be agents under that permit. Now they have to fill out the paperwork appropriately and record their harvest under that crop damage permit. But it's not just, it doesn't have to just be the farmer or his family. It can be authorized agents underneath of that crop damage permit.
I just want to check in with Delegate Feldmark. I think these were most of your questions. Are you good on this set of questions for now?
I am good on this set of questions. There were questions that I asked at the end of the work session that I'm hoping we'll get to later, but I can also follow up offline if needed.
Okay, I hope I got them. Let's take a quick break and look at the safety data, and then we'll go on and hopefully address the other questions. Can I just ask, Jen, are you having trouble hearing? Sorry, Delegate.
Yeah, I couldn't hear any of your last question, nor could
I'm going to
my-
pull it up right now.
It was all crackly, but apparently Tim could hear Mr. Maynard could hear the question and was able to answer it.
I think, are you also in, are you in Annapolis also? I think my Wi-Fi connection is unstable, and yours may be too, especially when the planes go over. We need to modernize the IT in the legislature. So really quickly, I was asking Tim if on a farm with a crop damage permit, who could hunt? And the answer was, it was that you had to be an agent listed underneath the crop damage permit.
Senator Hester, also just to follow up for a second, the 150 yards and the tree stand issue, are we going to revisit that? Because I had other questions around that, but I didn't want to, I understand the timing that we have this morning. So I don't think we addressed the issue of the 100 yards to 150 yards. If we're changing this from, or the proposal is 150 yards to 50 yards, but the tree or the elevated position is only from 50 to 100. So we didn't really talk about that piece about 100 to 150, or I don't know if we were discussing using that 8 feet for any bow hunting. So I don't know if we're going to follow up on that or not.
I'm trying to get all the questions answered.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Why don't we note that question? I don't know if somebody on the committee council could note Delegate Terraz's question, and we can just make sure that we get that addressed at the end.
Also, we have, just so you know, the House has session today at 11.
Right. Okay. So you guys will need to go at 10 to 11. Okay, we'll plow through. Just a high level overview. This has now all been mailed to your offices, but I just wanted, especially because the public's viewing, for them to see some of this data. So I'll turn it over to Tim to give the kind of voiceover on what we're seeing here.
Right. So I was asked to speak about the safety and incidents in regards to bow hunting in the state of Maryland. Myself and my staff, including Maryland Department of Natural Resources staff, would like everyone to note that since the existence of records as far as safety is concerned and incidents as they're related to hunting, there have been no instances of bystanders or the public being hurt in regards to bow hunting. Now, almost all of the incidents that have occurred and recorded by Maryland Department of Natural Resources have involved the hunters themselves, and a majority of them are yes. Go ahead, Jen.
So that's people, right? Not other animals being shot. I mean, we have reports of, I have a constituent who told me about a dog being shot, and that it sounded like from their veterinarian that was not uncommon.
I can't speak for how common that is. I would say any person engaging in anything like that is being extremely negligent and not following any type of rules. I don't know anybody that's ever accidentally shot an animal that they weren't targeting. I mean, all deer hunters.
No, I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm wondering is that data being collected? Are they collecting data? Like, if that's reported, or does it need to be reported to DNR? If it's reported to the police, is that kept?
Well, that would be a criminal police matter. That would not be a hunting issue at all. That's somebody breaking the law using a weapon that's not intended. I mean, dogs don't have a season, so that's just
no. I don't mean an intentional shooting of a dog. I mean somebody hunting and accidentally shooting a dog.
There's no record of that at all within DNR.
But are they keeping that? And has somebody checked with the police department?
I mean, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of. I would assume that would have been a non-hunter that would have done that if that happened. I don't know.
Okay, so anyone has to have a license. Sorry.
In the interest of time,
Sorry.
Delegate Terraza, could I just offer to follow up on this offline with you about the dogs? I mean, I don't know. I also don't know if we track the number of dogs that are hit by cars, but I will, we'll try to see if there have been any dog incidents. And that's gotta really, I just want to say publicly, I'm really sorry for your constituent whose dog got shot. That's absolutely horrible and probably illegal. So let's go back to this data. And Tim, if you could just clarify, the question that we asked last time is about the safety data and how many years back we have it. So I can't really see what year we're talking about here. You were kind of giving the overview, but we have sent multiple years of data. So this is 2018. So I'll turn it back over to Tim.
Correct. So DNR started tracking this data, and it's available on the MD-DNR website, which I can certainly share with everybody after this. I can share the link to all the data. But the data is tracked back all the way to the year 2000. And this is just FY18, and it gives you an example of how DNR tracks these instances. You can see that they track instances of what the weather was, the game species that was involved, and then we can come here and you can see that it records the hunting device that was used, and whether or not that was involved with a two-party incident, so involving a bystander, or if they were self-inflicted or it was a tree stand incident. So we've gone back and looked at all the data that is available from MD-DNR and talked to Brian Eiler from Wildlife Heritage Service. And he doesn't have any instances of there being any two-party involved instances in bow hunting in the whole state of Maryland. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't safety instances that happen to those hunters that are self-inflicted. So we're talking tree stand incidents, hunters that fall out of tree stands by accident. Almost all of the recorded instances are that hunters who accidentally fall out of their tree stands. So as an overview, bow hunting, by the data sets in the state of Maryland is inherently safe, in regards to bystanders or other people that may or may not be, either out in the woods or what have you. And if you would like, I can certainly share the link to all the data, after this meeting. Okay. Kevin Vest shared the link to all the data inside the chat room. Any questions in regards to safety data as it relates to bow hunting in the state of Maryland?
Just to circle back around, I actually have to leave as well because I have to get to session, but I guess what I want to know from DNR is what incidents are tracked. And so because my understanding is the incident that that I'm talking about in particular, and we heard about others, I believe, in committee when we've heard similar bills, but the incident was reported to DNR. So I guess my question is DNR tracking injuries to domestic animals?
I can't speak for that at this
So,
time.
right. So I just don't want to conclude that it doesn't happen from not having any data.
That's a really good point, Delegate Terraza. We will, I think our office will take that on. We'll reach out to DNR and we'll ask them if they are tracking the data.
Thank you. And I'm going to go, but I hope we can have a further conversation about increasing the managed hunts and the sharpshooting. And I really appreciate everyone's time. I apologize that I have to skip out in a minute.
So I think we've lost Delegate Terraza. I wouldn't mind just, So here's where we are for anybody viewing at home. We've answered 4 out of our 10 questions, gone through the DNR data, probably looking forward, looking to have another work session. What I think would be really helpful is we will resend all the safety data, the written answers to the 10 questions we have, and then I will check with the delegation co-chairs to see how much time we can have on the agenda for our work session on Wednesday. And if necessary, we'll try to find another time before then. I can't promise, but I can ask. So I would just like to thank all of our county staff for being on to answer these technical questions. I'd like to thank all of the delegates who were able to join us today. Anybody watching at home, thank you for tuning in. Have a good weekend, everybody.